It gets me every time. I'll go to a town, I won't spend very much time there, and I'm probably not going to have a great view of the place. Not necessarily negative, right? But I might wonder why you want to live there. Then you spend a lot of time in a little town, like I have in Great Falls, South Carolina for the last couple of days. And you kind of become fascinated as to why people don't visit Great Falls more, especially if they're into the outdoors. Great Falls is surrounded by water. The Catawba River starts in the Blue Ridge Mountains up in North Carolina and flows all the way out to the coast. And of course, from the top to the bottom, it's dotted with hydroelectric dams, which is actually what started Great Falls. Before Duke Energy became Duke Energy, they were Southern Power. And Southern Power built one of the first stations they built in this area in Great Falls. Oddly enough, this happened in the very early 1900s. But though there were mills, company stores, shopping areas, you name it, created in Great Falls from the early 1900s, it wasn't until 1968 when it actually became incorporated. The Catawba River is named after the Native American Indian tribe. The Catawba Nation has occupied this area for more than 6,000 years. They covered most of the Piedmont of South Carolina. They covered a lot of North Carolina, maybe all of it, all the way up into Virginia. And their population was somewhere between 15,000 and 25,000 people up until the first settlers arrived in the 18th century. The Catawba River has been the main economic driver for Great Falls since the beginning. And though the town has seen quite an economic decline, the Catawba River might be the very thing that actually brings it back from the brink. The downtown has a coffee shop, several hair salons, a thrift store, a post office, the shell of an old movie theater, and a town hall. The F on the front of the theater stood for Falls, and originally the movie theater had 125 seats, an Edison moving picture machine, a player piano, a stage, and a screen. Town Hall was formerly a bank, and now it has most of the administrative functions for the town, and they also hold traffic court there once a week. Downtown's not thriving, but it's clean, and I definitely enjoyed wandering around and talking to the shop owners and customers. As of 2023, there were 789 households and about 484 families. Average home value here is about $69,000, with a median value around $45,800. And yes, there's a waterfall, and there seems to be a lack of detail as to why there was originally 8 miles of waterfalls along the Catawba River that are no longer there. I have to assume that it has to do with the hydroelectric plant. But on a positive note, the town of Great Falls has a new agreement with Duke Energy that's going to open up 1.5 miles of the Catawba River that hasn't had water flow to it in who knows how long. Flop Eye's Diner is a staple in Great Falls. The building was originally built in the 1940s. The gentleman that built Flop Eyes was actually a retailer that sold goods that competed with the company store within the mills. Apparently, the gentleman had one bad eye, so they called him Flop Eye. Regardless of how the name came about for the diner, I highly suggest you stop for a meal. They have the best cheeseburger in the area.
Take care, buddy.
You too, brother. The average household income is about 60 grand. And just to give you a breakout of the home values here, about 3% are worth between $300,000 and $450,000. About 18% of them are worth between $152,000 and $300,000. 34% are between $76,000 and $152,000, and 45% are between $0 and $76,000. Average rent is $1,485. 50% of all the homes were built between 1940 and 1969, and most homes have between 2 or 3 bedrooms. Crime statistics show there's about 7.3 violent crimes per 1,000 people, compared to the state of South Carolina, which is about 4.9 per 1,000, and the national median is somewhere around 4 per 1,000 people. Great Falls has a number of initiatives that actually might restore their economic success from the past. What does they have? A new whitewater center called Nitro Lee. They're also building a footbridge that's going to allow you to walk over to the old armory that used to be on Mount Dearborn, also known as Big Island. The footbridge is going to be located downtown, which I believe is going to drive a whole lot more commerce. In my opinion, if they just had some publicity, this area could really be thriving again just based on the amount of outdoor recreation that they offer. When I looked up the statistics for the schools in Great Falls, I expected to see low population there. I assumed that meant the younger generation was leaving. When I looked up the statistics on Great Falls, I knew the population would be declining. It's almost across the board that way throughout South Carolina and all the smaller towns. But the thing I didn't expect was, oddly in Great Falls, they don't have a decrease in the younger generation. The only unrepresented age group in Great Falls is the 18 to 24-year-olds, which is only about 4.5%, and the overrepresented group is the 35 to 54-year-olds, which is at 26%, but the remaining brackets are all around 10% each. Great Falls is not what I thought it would be. Over the last week, I've spent time in my kayak, traveling the waterways, time in the car driving through town, walking through town, meeting the people. And when I moved here 20 years ago, if you drove through the main road, which is Highway 21, right through the middle of town, you'd be highly unimpressed. It looks like a gas station and maybe one restaurant. Turns out it's a really cute town with a lot more elevation change than I've seen in most of the state. No, it's not mountains, but it's hilly. And it's one of the few that I think that can turn it around economically. I really hope you watch the entire series of videos about Great Falls and the surrounding area. Personally, been one of my most interesting travels this close to home.